Hello my dear students, this is Father Santosh, a history lecturer, and I am going to take history for English medium students, for first PUC students. Today I would like to take the first chapter, that is the introduction. As you know, in your group I have already sent the book picture, which book you have to take. At the same time, I also have sent you the chapters which we are going to deal with this year. So let me begin the first chapter. The chapter name is Introduction. And in this introduction, we would like to study the first part, that is meaning and definition of history. In this class, let us study about the meaning of the history and also the definitions. There are so many people have given the definition on history. These things we will study. So first, let me start with the meaning of the history. Meaning of the history. Meaning. So what is the meaning of history? History has been derived from the Greek word historia, Greek word called historia. History has been derived from Greek word historia, which means inquiry or investigation. So history has been derived from the Greek word historia, which means inquiry or investigation. The meaning of history is investigation or inquiry. So this is the meaning of history. So once again I repeat, the meaning of history, which has derived from Greek word called historia, which means inquiry or investigation. So next step is about who is the father of history. We must know, when we are speaking about history, we also must know the originator of history. People were writing many things, but they had not recorded properly. The first one to record about the incident was Herodotus. The father of history is Herodotus. So the Greek historian named called Herodotus. In the exam, two questions we have already discussed. What are the questions we have discussed? The question which we discussed is the meaning of the history and also the father of history. So as I said, what is the meaning of history? The meaning of history is the history has been derived from the Greek word historia, which means inquiry and investigation. Second question we have discussed already. Who is the father of history? The father of history is Herodotus. He is coming from Greece country. That's why he has been called as a Greek historian. Herodotus. Now let us discuss something about the definitions of history. So now we already discussed about the meaning of history. Now let us discuss about the definitions of history. So the definitions of history. So when we are discussing about definitions of history, history doesn't have a particular definition. History means this. We know the meaning of the history, but the definitions, there are different people have given different definitions of history. I may say one definition about history. The another person may say another definitions of history. You may say another definitions of history according to your experiences. In the same way, there are many historians have given different definitions of history. Today let us discuss what are these personalities: Herodotus, St. Augustine, Karl Marx, J.B. Bury, Arnold Toynbee and Jawaharlal Nehru. These these are the people, how they say about the history, what are the definitions they give. So first let us discuss about Herodotus. He is being called as the father of history, Herodotus. As we know, Herodotus was a Greek historian. He lived in the 5th century BCE. 5th century BCE. History students must know. So what is the difference between CE and BCE? So CE is called Common Era. Now it is a present word. CE means present era, Common Era. BCE means before Common Era. So first comes before Common Era, then comes the CE. Now we are living in the year 2020 CE. So, but Herodotus lived in the year 5th century BCE. 5th century BCE. So he was a Greek historian. At the same time, he lived in the year 5th century BCE. So what is his very important work? Work means the book. The book, what he has written. Work means not the work which we do, manual work. That is not the work you are speaking. Kriti. Kritiಯ ಹೆಸರೇನು? What is the work of Herodotus? Herodotus has written a book called The History of Persian War. The History of Persian War. History of Persian War. In this, the book he writes or he records about the war between which took place Greece as well as Persians. So there is a book. The work of Herodotus is the History of Persian War. So according to him, what is history? What is history? Definition. According to him, what is history? He says, history is a record of great heroes and unique events. History is a record of great heroes and unique events to be remembered by the future generations. To be remembered by the future generations. So, according to Herodotus, what is history? According to Herodotus, history is a record of great heroes. There are many people who have lived and gone in this country, in this world. But for Herodotus, there are people who have become heroes. For example, Ashoka maybe Akbar or Chandragupta Maurya, Mahatma Gandhi. So these are all Napoleon Bonaparte. These are all great heroes, unique heroes, great heroes, and unique events. Unique events means there are so many events take place. I am taking class. This is also one of the events. There are people who are working. That is also the event. But he says not all the events. Unique events, the particular events. Which is the particular events? Maybe the independence of a country, maybe the Buxar War, maybe the war which took place in a different countries, maybe the First World War, Second World War. Those are all unique events which has taken place in this world. So, unique events to be remembered by the future generation. These are the things to be remembered by the future generations. Not only us, but also by the future generation. Since it was recorded, that's why we know what happened 2000 years before. We know what happened 1000 years before, what happened 100 years before. We know how the independence we got it. So these are all records, so that the future generation also will come to know. So according to the Herodotus, history is a record of great heroes and unique events to be remembered by the future generations. So this is what the Herodotus speaks about history. Next, the personality which we are going to discuss is Saint Augustine. So next personality we are discussing about Saint Augustine. So Saint Augustine was a Catholic saint. He lived in the year 354 to 430 CE. 354 to 430 CE. Saint Augustine also was a sinner. His early life was not a good life. His mother always prayed, Monica, that Saint Augustine one day may be converted. He may be a good person. And one day he gets converted. And later he becomes a great historian, great saint in the Catholic Church. So he also has written a work. He also has written a book. So what is the book of Saint Augustine? The Saint Augustine has written a book called The City of God. The City of God. City of God. So the City of God. So Saint Augustine has written a book called The City of God. So what is the definition of Saint Augustine on history? So what does he say about history? According to Saint Augustine, history is the story of the struggle between God. History is the story of the struggle between. History is the story, the struggle between. Once again I repeat, definition of Saint Augustine, the history is the story, the struggle between God and Satan. God and Satan. Ultimately, there is a victory over Satan. According to Saint Augustine, the definition of history is the story, the struggle between God and Satan. Ultimate end is the victory of good over evil. Ultimately, the victory of good over Satan. To explain this, it's very easy. Saint Augustine says, history is a struggle. It's a ಸಂಘರ್ಷ. ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ಸಂಘರ್ಷ. ಯಾರ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ಸಂಘರ್ಷ? ದೇವರ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ಮತ್ತು ಸೈತಾನನ ನಡುವೆ ನಡೆಯುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಸಂಘರ್ಷ. It's a struggle between God and evil. Later, at the end, the victory of God over Satan. ಕೊನೆಗೆ ಯಾರು ಗೆಲ್ತಾರೆ? ದೇವರು ಗೆಲ್ತಾರೆ. ಯಾರ ಮೇಲೆ? ಸೈತಾನನ ಮೇಲೆ. ಇದು ಸಂತ ಅಗಸ್ಟಿನ್ ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದು. What does mean here God? God means good. God means good. Satan means evil. We are seeing in this world there is a struggle, there is a sangharsha between good and evil. And when we speak about good and evil, at the end, who wins? Good wins. The truth wins. And evil suffers. Evil be defeated. So that's what Saint Augustine says about history. History is a struggle between God and Satan. Later, the good wins and evil will be defeated. So my dear friends, always stand for the truth. Always stand for the good. If we are standing for the evil, if we are standing for the Satan, surely one day or the other day we will be defeated. If we are standing for the truth, justice, then one day we will win. This is what Saint Augustine says. According to him, history is a struggle between God and Satan. Ultimately, at the end, the good wins and the evil will be defeated. Next, the third personality which we are speaking about is Karl Marx. Karl Marx. Let us discuss about another personality, Karl Marx. Karl Marx. So Karl Marx was a German historian. Karl Marx was a German historian, and he too was a great personality. Karl Marx was a sociologist. He was a person of history. He also was an economist. He was a journalist. He was a social revolutionary. Now, when we are speaking about Karl Marx, he also has written a work. ಅವನು ಸಹ ಒಂದು ಬುಕ್ ಅನ್ನು ಬರೆದಿದ್ದಾನೆ, ಅನೇಕ ಬುಕ್ಸ್ ಗಳನ್ನು ಬರೆದಿದ್ದಾನೆ, ಅನೇಕ ಕೃತಿಗಳನ್ನು ಬರೆದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ವರ್ಕ್. So what is the work of Saint Augustine? Saint Augustine work is one is Das Kapital. Das Kapital. Das Kapital. So this is one of the books of Karl Marx. The another book which he has written is Communist Manifesto. Communist Manifesto. Communist Manifesto. Communist Manifesto. So another book of Karl Marx is Communist Manifesto. The two books which Karl Marx has written, there are many books he has written. There are many books which Karl Marx has written, but two very important books of Karl Marx are Das Capital, D-A-S Capital. Another is Communist Manifesto. So what is the definition of Karl Marx? What is the definition of Karl Marx on history? So Karl Marx says history is a story. History is a story. History is a story. He says history is a story of the struggle between have and have nots. ಕಾರ್ಲ್ ಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಹೇಳೋ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಅಂದರೆ ಒಂದು ಕತೆ. ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಅಂದರೆ ಸಂಘರ್ಷ. ಆ ಸಂಘರ್ಷ ಯಾರ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ನಡೆಯುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಸಂಘರ್ಷ? ಉಳ್ಳವರು ಮತ್ತು ಉಳ್ಳದೇ ಇರುವವರ ನಡುವೆ ನಡೆಯುವಂತಹ ಸಂಘರ್ಷ. ಅದು ಕಾರ್ಲ್ ಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಅವರು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಹಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿ ಅವರ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಅಂದರೆ ಉಳ್ಳವರು ಮತ್ತು ಉಳ್ಳದೇ ಇರುವವರ ನಡುವೆ ನಡೆಯುವಂತಹ ಸಂಘರ್ಷಕ್ಕೆ ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಅಂತ ಕರೀತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಹಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿ ಇಸ್ ಎ ಸ್ಟ್ರಗಲ್ ಬಿಟ್ವೀನ್ have and have nots. This is what Karl Marx says. So we have discussed about Karl Marx. Karl Marx has written a book called Das Kapital and also the Communist Manifesto. And the definition of history according to Karl Marx is history is a story of the struggle between have and have nots. Next, the personality which we are going to deal with is the fourth personality, that is J.B. Bury. J.B. Bury. The fourth one is J.B. Bury. J.B. Bury. So we are discussing about J.B. Bury. Who is J.B. Bury? J.B. Bury was an Irish historian. He was an Irish historian. J.B. Bury was an Irish historian. He lived in the year 1861 to 1927 CE. So J.B. Bury, according to him, the definition of history. So what does he say? J.B. Bury, according to him, what is history? According to him, the history is a science, no less and no more. History is a science. History is a science. Science. No less and no more. No more. So he compares history to a science. Irish historian, he compares for history as a science. History is a science, no less and no more, which means history also is a science. Why he does says history is a science? Because through history we will come to know many more things. It investigates, it inquires. So that's why for him history is a science. It's no less and no more. So that's the definition of J.B. Muri on history. He also says that history is the oldest art. History is the oldest art. But for us, for the marks purpose, we will learn only one definition on history of J.B. Muri. It's a very simple definition. That is, history is a science, no less and no more. Now let us go for the next personality who speaks about history, and that is the Arnold Toynbee. Arnold Toynbee. Arnold Toynbee. Arnold Toynbee. So it was an historian. So Arnold Toynbee also was a philosopher. So he was a British historian. He was a British historian. Arnold Toynbee was a British historian. So Arnold Toynbee, who lived in the year 1889 to 1975 CE. So he lived in the year 1889 to 1975 CE. So what is his work? His work is a story of history, a study of history. Sorry. His work is a study of history. A study of history. So Arnold Toynbee writes a book, Kruti, or work is a study of history. In an exam, if they ask what is the work of Arnold Toynbee, and we must know to answer, the work of Arnold Toynbee is a study of history. A study of history. So he was a British historian. Now let me come to for his definition. What does he say about history? Arnold Toynbee. So Arnold Toynbee says, according to him, history is the story of the rise and fall of civilization. Rise and fall of civilization. Rise and fall of civilization. So, according to Arnold Toynbee, history is the story of rise and fall of civilization. So, what does it mean? He says there are civilizations have occurred in this world. Maybe the Indus Valley civilization, Mesopotamia civilization, Chinese civilization. But those civilizations